they have all these really sophisticated books about the developmental stages, which are actually somewhat interesting and sometimes in a lot of detail and boring. But it comes down to 4 things. Do for, do with, witness and coach, witness and applaud. So I appreciate the coaching. Thank you very much. I am still in one of those developmental stages. As usual, we're going to do things a little differently when I'm talking. What a surprise. I'm sure everybody here is just stunned. Donna has graciously agreed to be the chant master because I can't. Good thing it wasn't a requirement for becoming a nun. But what I'm going to suggest is, I find that sometimes when I'm saying something, it's hard for me to think about it. When I'm reciting. So what I'd like to suggest is, as we're saying the prayers, if it helps you to think and reflect upon it by saying it out loud with us, that's fine. If it doesn't, then just stay with it and think about it. The most important thing is to bringing your mind to the thoughts that these words bring up. And it's Father's Day. How many fathers? 1, 2, 3. Okay, come on, stand up. We got to see you. Oh, never mind. Okay. He doesn't, yeah, okay. Raise your hands. Come on. Hi. 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 Wow. I bet you that's a father. That has to be father. I see him. Okay, great. Well, today's about you. And so as we say these prayers, I would like you to think about, like for refuge, that the qualities that you either experienced from your father or that you wanted in your father but he didn't have, how does refuge help you recognize those in your father? For those of us who, I don't have one alive anymore. And how does it help you develop those qualities as because I'm assuming everybody's here at the center because they want something, If they didn't, you could go to Bruegger's and read the Wall Street Journal. So we're going to start with Refuge in Bodhicitta. It will be in English. We're going to say it 3 times. Donna, thanks.
So go to page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book. And we'll do Taking Refuge in Generating Bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings.
The next prayer we're going to say is the Four Immeasurables. And so when I was thinking about my own father and, people that have been father-like to me in good and bad ways, I was thinking about, the Four Immeasurables: equanimity, joy, compassion, love. And all of those at one time or another, I either experienced from my father or from other people that I saw as mentors and as, in a sense, parenting me. So I invite you to do the same.
So at the bottom of page 34, may all sentient beings have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies.
The next thing we're going to do is a short mandala offering. And there's two parts to this. There's the imagining just everything wonderful in the entire universe, as great as your imagination can be, and offering it to all the holy beings, but also for the benefit of all beings. Of course, water's in my mandala, for anybody that's familiar with me. And then the second part of it is, offering the qualities of ourselves, both positive and negative. And so, again, I guess I'll broaden this. It's not just fathers, it's parents. I actually think they must be really holy beings to enter. I was a step parent for 5 years, and I've never had a more unrelenting job in my entire life than parenting. So I don't think anyone that chooses to parent is an ordinary being. Not if their children reach 18 and they're still alive. So, Donna, thanks.
Okay, now we'll turn to page 27. And about the middle of the page, we have the short mandala offering, and we'll just read through both stanzas. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of my attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, strangers, and my body, wealth, and enjoyments. Without any sense of loss, I offer this collection. Please accept it with pleasure and bless me with freedom from the 3 poisons. Idam Guru Ratnamalakam Niryatayami.
Okay, so we're going to say some mantras. We're going to say Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra 3 times. And as we do these mantras again, if it helps you to say them, fine. If it helps you to think about the qualities that these mantras bring to mind, then do what works best for you, because it's about changing your mind. It's about being present and having a positive mind and a good heart.
Okay, we're back to page 34. At the top of the page, Shakyamuni Buddha mantra. Taya Tao Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha. Taya Tao Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha. Taya Tao Maha Munaye Soha. Okay, now before we dismiss the children, Vivian's got a couple of words for the parents.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vivian, and I and Dorothy Robinson are going to be doing the Project 16 for 16 guidelines. I invite all children to come with me. We're going to be doing some artwork throughout the summer, clay, painting, and all kinds of movie-making magic for the summer. And any kids who are under the age or pre-K level, you are welcome to join take them to the pre-K room and sit with them if you need to. I hope that makes sense. All right.
Anybody, you can be an adult. If you want to go with here and paint and play, that's fine with me. It might be more fun. Vivian is pretty amazing in terms of the way she can share her creativity and encourage you to not be scared of diving in. So I found out Thursday afternoon about 3 o'clock that I was doing this today. No, that's not the reason I'm saying it. It's just don't have high expectations. But I've actually been kind of fortunate. I think the last time I had to talk was Memorial Day, and it's interesting that, I get another quotes kind of holiday where I'm supposed to talk. So it's kind of like a writing prompt. It's kind of a prompt for, what will the topic be? So I thought about, gee, how am I going to do this? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And I wasn't even thinking about Father's Day at the time. And then I thought, well, I'll do something on Father's Day. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do on Father's Day? How do you talk for an hour about Father's Day? And then I thought, Geshe Sangpo, when he's been teaching over kind of in and out, has been teaching on the 6 perfections. And, I thought, well, that is a perfect combination, Father's Day and the 6 perfections. Because I don't know how one could be a parent and not engage in the 6 perfections, whether one was trying to or not. And I say this, when we talk about the 6 perfections or we talk at the Bodhisattva vows, somebody came to me once and said, they're offering the Bodhisattva vows. I don't know if I can take them because I don't know if I can keep them. And I looked at them and I said, well, of course you can't. And they kind of looked at me and I said, it's not personal. It's really not personal. You can't completely or perfectly keep the Bodhisattva vows until you're a Bodhisattva at the 10th bhumi, seconds away from becoming a fully enlightened Buddha. And, first to just explain it, bhumis are levels, but when I first heard bhumi, I'm that bhumi, what's a bhumi? And I when you play the video games or the word games and you get a really good word, like you get the long one and it makes little sparkles and stars. So I thought each level was, like when you reached it as a bodhisattva, you got sparkles and stars, but then I found out that really wasn't quite what it was about. And so the same thing is true of the 6 perfections. We start them, we keep working on them, but the full realization of them is, well, there may be many people in this room that has fully realized them. I can assure you, for me, it's eons away. So I'm going to talk about the 6 perfections and fatherhood, and because I really want to talk about how every one of there's a phrase in the from Lama Tsongkhapa is that every word of the teachings are instructions for practice. And it can be, there's medicine Buddha that they'll do at noon, but it's also very, very practical. It's rubber to the road, day to day. Now, as a result of this, I thought my father died in 1987, which is a very, very long time ago. And actually, I was just thinking about it. I think pretty close to, no, not quite. I was just thinking, I've been as alive as many years with him dead as I was alive, but I haven't quite done that yet. So I'm going to tell stories about my father, partly because I just like to talk about him. But primarily because as I was thinking about him, he is one of the clearest examples of both the best and the worst in parenting. And I really mean it. I've been known to exaggerate, but I really mean no exaggeration about this, okay? So I'll be using him to illustrate the practice of the six perfections. And that's interesting because he was a Catholic, but he did. And at some point, I probably will invite people to share stories about their parents. And one of the things I want to talk about is I kind of had I thought, well, gee, do you want to talk about this? Some people will say to you, I had the worst father. He was abusive. He was this. There is absolutely nothing that I can think of that is positive about my father. Even the fact that he helped make me, because I would have rather have not been born. I mean, people have been that. But let's say you've gotten over that. What I think is I have met some really, really great fathers that became that way because they looked at what they didn't want and worked very, very hard to develop the qualities as parents. And there's people that didn't have fathers, that never knew fathers. Fathers that died in the war, fathers that who had other people that parented them, sometimes kindly, sometimes not so kindly. So the first perfection is generosity. And it's interesting, they talk about one of the first things that Tibetan families do, and I saw this when I've been at teachings in India, is when they make an offering, a financial offering or a flower offering, they almost always give part of it to their children to offer. So from a very, very young age, in the Tibetan culture that I witnessed, sharing was part. So I really looked up generosity, and this is not a very helpful definition. The quality of being kind and generous. I love redundant definitions, but it's an open-handedness and unselfishness. And I think one of the core things of generosity that makes it possible is the beginning to believe that there's enough to go around. It's very, very hard to be generous from a place that there's not enough. So there's 4 different types of generosity in our teachings. One is giving material needs. And I began to think, well, how do fathers do that, and parents? Because some people have had to be father and mother. So I celebrate you too if you're one of those people that had to be father and mother, or if you're a father that had to be mother and father. but it's material needs and wants, because the bodhisattvas, that they're pretty amazing. There's, well, you don't really need that. That's a want. How they hook people is they give them not only what they need, but they often kind of give them what they want. But there's food, there's housing, there's diapers, there's cell phones, there's vacations, there's college. Oh, there's driving the mini-mobile to every place that they have to go. There's a great book about adolescence called, well, I can't, it's about adolescence, but the subtitle is "Get Out of My Life, but would you drive me to the mall first?" And so, but it reminded me of my father. It reminded me a lot of my father. Now, so here's an example of the worst. He could be extremely selfish, and he could be a real chicken. So he liked to play cards. And so he lost all the money for the down payment for the house. And he sent the parish priest to tell my mother. Now, what can you say? It's kind of like the Geshe calling you up and asking you, will you talk? It's like, what are you going to say? Okay. And at the same time, this was a man who, he never did it again. He learned, which is astounding for some of us. I have never been a one-trial learner. He learned. And he didn't stop playing cards, but he stopped doing it in a way that deprived the family. But the other thing he was generous with was he lent money to people when he knew he would never get it back. And he knew he needed to. He had a set of secret errands he did. He would disappear saying, I've got to run an errand. And nobody ever knew where he was going. We found out at his wake that he ran around town delivering food and newspapers to people who couldn't afford it or couldn't get out. So, I think of generosity for parents. You want season tickets to the Hurricanes, the family wants to go to Disney World. And you do it. You do it. Because they're going up. You're generous with your time. You come home in the afternoon, your children want to play catch, they want to talk to you, they want to do something, and you just want to sit down possibly and not talk to anybody or do anything momentarily. And also it may recharge your batteries to come home and see your kids and they're happy, but there are times when, you're tired, but you do it. And then you get into it and it's kind of fun. My father was selfish with his time. He would always say he had to go back to work. Of course, this was code for going to the Italian-American club and playing cards. Of course, later I learned that he really didn't like crowds and there were 6 kids. So he was just trying to survive, it's like, but he didn't. So, and if these stories get boring, you can just tell me and I'll just stop. Giving the Dharma. That's another way. We're giving the Dharma. And I think of the kids that just left here that are in the family program. you know, you made sure that everybody got here so they could participate. Family Dharma camp. The fathers that work on it, all the parents that work on it to make it possible. All the people that aren't parents that work on it to make it possible. And there are. And we're thinking of some of you because planning for it's coming up soon, so get ready. Your phone shall ring. But I also think not just about, you know, they say that the Buddha had 84,000 teachings and that he taught for the disposition of every person. So I really believe that any spiritual path that helps you have a good heart, as the Dalai Lama would say, is part of the Dharma. And many of the parents help us do that, and fathers. Giving protection. Fathers help put a roof over your head. They also jerk you out of the street when you didn't listen, which is giving protection. Maybe they helped you learn to swim. Maybe they helped you learn to ride a bike so, you know, there wasn't too much damage. Giving love. Lama Yeshe is really big on this one. Giving love. So it's the hugs. It's tucking someone in. It's holding a disturbed child. It's acceptance. The ways in which I remember, Father's Day, I saved money and gave him the most awful shirt. I mean, I still have an image of that shirt, and I thought it was magnificent. How he didn't cringe, I have no idea. And he wore it, not just once. I mean, it was so ugly. I can't even imagine. Now, today it would be very vogue, but in 1956, it was really ugly. I remember, for me, one of the greatest acts of love that I remember from my father, and my brother wouldn't mind if I told this story. My brother is gay. One of my brothers is gay. And he came out in the mid-'70s, which is not particularly an easy time, not in the community so much. And he came home to tell my parents. And, he talked to all of the family, all the siblings individually. And I remember the letter my father wrote my brother afterwards. And the letter said, I paraphrase, but this is pretty close. He said, I can't say if you asked me how I want it, I would have said, oh, I want my youngest son to be gay. He said, but what I want you to know is that it doesn't matter. What I want you to know is that I love you, and you always, always have a place in my heart. I can't think of giving love, I mean, this is an Italian macho man, first generation Italian. I mean, don't mess with this Italian stud. And that's where he was at with it. And I appreciated that. So, but there's a story, I really like the story, and it kind of demonstrates several kinds of well, actually, I'll tell that story at the end. Never mind. I'm going to hold that one. I like that one. So, the next perfection is morality. There are, again, we Buddhists just love lists. And so there's 3 aspects to the perfection of morality. One is restraining from wrongdoing. One is accumulating merit. and the morality of benefiting sentient beings. So, my father was I would say he was a rageaholic. Yeah, good description, rageaholic. And I don't know if raging makes you an immoral person, because you kind of say some nasty things, do some bad things when you're raging. But he was one of the most honest men I've ever known. And just like any of us, that there's some of the things that, we do that we'd like to not do, but we don't have any control over. But I watched that honesty throughout my life. Well, he had morality of accumulating merit. He often went to daily Mass. He ensured that we all went to Mass. And the rituals of the Catholic spiritual tradition were practiced in my house. I certainly think it was kind of the roots of the karmic connection to Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism likes lots of pictures and lots of colors and lots of candles, and if we could, there'd be lots of incense in here, kind of Buddha bling, and so you come in from a Catholic church and you feel right at home. And there's even a different language, for those of us that grew up, for us old people, pre-Vatican II. And the morality of benefiting others. And he did that. He benefited his children. He benefited people in his community. We who were terrified of him were surprised to find out he was really, really well liked in the community. And stuff. So, I'm going to stop for a second here. I'm going to look. It's 11:07. Boy, I'm doing well. Sometimes my talks are very short. And invite people to, if they want, as again Geshe says, no pressure, to share stories about their parents. It could be fathers, it could be mothers. I invite you to do that. And if not, we'll move on to patience.
I want to share something that my father said that I think about often as a really good guide as to how to live. We also grew up Roman Catholic, and he was quite dedicated. And he said that heaven is when people that have been around you say things that say nice things about you because they benefited from your presence. That they felt good around you, or were changed in a positive way, or whatever. So he said that was his definition of heaven. Whether you're alive or dead, heaven is when people say nice things about you. And he said hell is when they're glad you're dead.
I like that.
I think about that. No matter how you interpret it, it's always a good thing to make people glad that you're around, and not be glad when you die.
Unfortunately, if you have any belief in karma, that dead thing doesn't work. because you're going to meet him again. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, Susie. Hi.
Good morning. Hi.
Morning.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everybody can hear. Right.
So,
The closer to your mouth, the better.
I have 5 children.
Oh.
One of them is in medical school, and 4 of them we homeschool, 18, 13, 11, and 6.
Wow.
And we travel North America most of the time. And people ask me sometime about parenting. To me, the meaning of life is encapsulated in the following that was revealed to me one night, which is that we have a choice to be, as I call it, a karma relayer or a karma sink.
A what? I'm sorry.
A karma relayer or a karma sink. Let me explain. Everything that has happened to me in my life, bad things, you have a choice. Do you pass it on to your kids, or do you say this far and no further? And that has been the pillar upon which I founded my parenting, and the reason that we homeschool the kids. It is not easy, but I think if we can recognize, this is the most important part, if we can learn to recognize why our parents did certain things because they themselves were unable to say this far and no further, that's when everything just falls apart in a positive way. All of the chains break. And so it took me 49 years to realize that my father didn't know quite how to do that.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Close to your mouth.
Yeah, so thinking about this and listen to what you said about your father, and you said, if I understand correctly, your father didn't really display. There was things about your father that
He was the worst and the best.
the worst and the best. Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
I look at these, the ones that we've gone through so far. I can honestly say that my father didn't display any of these. Perhaps given material things and needs, but only because he had to. He was a military man, and sometimes he would withhold money. And my mother taking care of 4 kids. He was in Europe. My mother we were here, and so she would report on him, and then he had to give the money. So I didn't have any of that, and many of the guys I work with in prison, they have the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. However, I was able to see, always able to see, it seems, that he had the potential. I was always able to see that he really wanted to be able to do better. He just didn't know how to do better. And in time, that allowed me to be able to forgive him. Long before I became a Buddhist, I think he was probably perhaps the first person that I ever was able to forgive. So I think that still, I'm very grateful for him for being in my life. I'm very grateful that I was born. I'm grateful that he was my father, because he taught me how not to be. So in effect, he was my teacher. Yeah. So I just want to say that many of us aren't fortunate to have those types of fathers that embody this. I've tried to be this with my own children, and I fell short. But we try, we do our best,
We all
and
fall short.
so
Come
forth.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So so it's like I think we can always find something good, even from the worst, right?
Oh.
We can all benefit, even from the worst.
Well, to quote
That's what I want to
Shantideva,
share.
even if the difficulties fall down on me like rain, I will take these difficulties as the path to transform. But all difficulties are, on stuff. So yeah, thanks, Andre. Yeah, Fran.
Memory's a funny thing. For many, many years, I had a certain amount of envy of male friends of mine because they could do certain skills, they could do certain things very well that my father didn't teach me, but they were taught by their fathers. So I'd always joke with people and say, my father only taught me 3 things. Wash the car from the top down, wear a condom, and it's just as easy to marry a rich woman as a poor woman. So I always made a joke about that, although for a while, I remember getting to a point where I realized the joke was dangerous, because then I would fill my head that he taught me nothing, because that's what I was basically saying to other people. And I started by saying memory is a funny thing. I can remember reaching back and trying to remember other things, because it's always the best and the worst, maybe in everybody. But I was sticking with the worst. So a memory popped up a couple of years ago. When I was a small child in the Bronx, New York, in an Italian family, I remember being in the car with my father, just up the road from where we lived in the city. And a young man, a shoeshine boy, teenager, was down on his hands and knees rubbing the sidewalk. And the guy who owned the store right there came out and started yelling at this guy. And my father jumped out of the car, and I heard my father say to the fellow, no, he didn't do it. He's cleaning it up. Somebody wrote a profanity on the sidewalk. And this young fellow took something out of his box and was trying to clean off the chalk or paint or whatever it was. And so this guy thought he had done it. And I was just watching. I was very young. We left the Bronx when I was 9, so I was at the most 8 years old, probably younger. And I watched my father tell the truth, help someone, and then give the young teenager or whatever money because he had used up his whatever material he used. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that memory is such that you can block things and force yourself to go all the way to one side. Bad father, bad father, bad father. And I have to remember that there's both and to look for the other to create more of a balance, because there was a balance in my life. And so I remember that since remembering that event, others have popped up to help me see both over the last 10 years or more.
Yeah. Yeah. So he offered protection to that young man. He offered needs, and he offered you
he offered me a lesson in morality.
Yeah. Wow. All in 3 minutes. No, I mean, you really, I mean, it's like, so thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi. I never knew my father. However, what really struck me very much and stays with me is Anthony Bourdain. I don't know if you know, but he was a world-renowned chef, very wealthy, successful, restaurateur, 61 years old, good-looking. He had it all. From what I read, he was even in love. Well, he committed suicide, and he said, I read somewhere, that I'm a great conversationalist, you know, he was supposed to be bright, this and that, with everybody except with the people closest to me. So I thought that might just be very important, you know.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. What?
Why is that where one would not be, sorry, I was just wondering, I didn't mean to, I apologize. No.
Well, that's a topic for another talk I can give.
I know. Why is
No,
it
I
that, sorry, why is it? I don't know. This is very emotional for me to hear everybody's story. I apologize. But why is it that he could give so much to others and not, I guess he was scared to get close to people, to be hurt? I don't know. I'm just wondering, any insight.
Well, there's lots of hypotheses about that, and I guess one I would say is, I think people that are incapable of or not incapable, have such difficulty sharing with those close to them, is difficulty of any kind of intimacy with themselves, you know, and you know, there's a lot of, you know, of fear-based stuff. I don't know. Some of us never learned, you know, how to do it. It was just no one spoke in the family. There's different reasons for every person. It's just so sad and deprives people. It's the deprivation is for the person that would receive the sharing, and the deprivation is for the person that doesn't share. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, you in the Lincoln, then this person, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm very blessed. I have two fathers. I have a stepfather and a father. And I always think that God put them in my life because I was such a handful. I really needed the whole crew. And my stepfather was Greek-Italian, and he was very free with his rage. But you always knew where you stood with him. The honesty, really. It's like, until you get out in the world, you don't appreciate it. But it's like, I know exactly where I'm at.
Thanks, Link.
So he always taught me how to be honorable and, you know, ethics, and he really tried to instill that in me. And then I had to contrast it with my father, who, and, you know, as an absent father, I had my own emotional hang-ups about that, feeling abandoned and whatnot. But he always led by example, and he would do things and he would never hang it over your head. It would never be, well, she should be grateful for this. Mm-hmm. And I'm only going to list a few examples. I don't want to go too much into storytelling, but one of them included I had run away to Florida, you know, stole my mom's car and then took a train down there. And he drove through the night, the 14 hours, round trip to pick me up. And there wasn't a hint of anger when he arrived. He saw that I was in pain. And that's why I had run away. So he didn't reprimand me or scold me. He was there to support me.
Thanks.
And he never hung it over me. He never had that air about him. And the other moving thing that he did, one of them, was when I turned 18, I ran away from home because it was legal, you know. And you know, they couldn't catch me after that. But I had $2,000 in my bank account, and I thought it was the bank's error. And I was like, I'm getting away with something here. And it wasn't until years later that I realized he had deposited $2,000 in my bank account and never said a word of it to me. Just so he could help me survive. So, yeah. So I'm sharing this, you know, for my own sake, but also for all the deeds that all the fathers have done that have not been thanked or acknowledged or any way but by themselves. You know, your father and the deeds he did in the community. Thank you so much. You know,
Thanks.
Even if no one sees it, that's true virtue. So thank you.
Thank you, Link. Would you, pass it. See. No, Susie, this woman right here has been trying to talk.
I was going to change my mind because I always say stuff that sounds like not fitting to me. But I always talk about neuroscience stuff. So this year I started using Myers-Briggs personality testing stuff in my work with patients. And there's a type that's the rarest one. It's like less than 1% of the population, and it's called INFJ. Introverted, intuitive, feeling, perceiving.
No, judging. You just said.
INFJ, judging, right, judging. So I wanted to rename my clinic INFJ Central because, like, even though it's the rarest in the population, apparently, like, 80% of people who come in are INFJ. They're so private, they don't want to go to anybody that knows them. So, the other thing that every time I find another INFJ, I'm like, oh my God. So, because we have a name for them, like shorthand, we call them tortured souls. Because, I mean, honestly, they are the most, they have the most inherent contradictions in their actual personality. Like every part of their personality is turned against a different part of their personality. So it's like a tough personality to have. They're kind of deep people, but like, for example, just, love people, exhausted by people, so that, how do you live like that, right? So you figure year after year after year after year, you love people so much, whatever, but oh my God, you're exhausted by people. So like, how do you deal with that? So, I mean, I guess he got to his end of his rope. If he was my candidate for an INFJ maybe. That's all I wanted to point out, is some brains just don't do certain things very easily at all, which is why you have to comb through the whole life history to see for evidence of what's really going on in there. So that's just my contribution.
Thank you. And then, okay. You, and then we'll move on, okay? Thanks.
My dad has been an inspiration and guide for me in generosity through my life since I found out about this. When he and my mother met, he was homeless, and he had 9 children, and he told me that he was unwilling to take anything that he did for himself that he didn't need. So he had a sleeping bag and a winter coat and boots, and he was working on the assembly line for GM where he met my mother, and just giving all the rest of his money and his time to his other 9 children. And also my mother, because she saw something valuable and worthy in this homeless man, that she started dating him and married him and had 2 more children with him. And then throughout my life, watching my dad give his love to his children, his grandchildren, friends, and neighbors with time and money, like loans that he knew weren't going to come back. He would tell them right away, this is not a loan, this is a gift. So that was my dad.
Thanks. And Susie here, right here, please. Thanks.
Thank you. I think when we started off this conversation, I had some introspection about my father, and so there was a moment when my wife was pregnant. I grabbed a whole bunch of books and I started reading books and tried to learn how to be a dad. And then there's all the commotion and the nesting and the painting and the pink everything, and the hospital, and you're never sleeping, and baby has to be under the light, and you get home and there's finally a moment of quiet, and you're there, and there's a new baby, and you're exhausted and exhilarated, and you put the child down, and I look at my wife, my partner, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what? They let us take this child home. Like, I'm not certified to do this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I read these books, and what do we do? And that moment through, and then years later, and my father passed away, and there's all these moments in parenting where I just realize that my dad and my parents, there wasn't a manual. They'll sell you plenty of books. There's not a manual on how to do this. Dads, I'm sure there's plenty of, there's a million wonderful dads out there, but I don't know how to do this. And then I realized, you know what? I had all these expectations about my dad. He should have done this and he should have done that, and man, he could have done this better, and why didn't he tell his kids that he was proud of them and that he loved them, and why didn't he do more of this and a little less with the belt? But he didn't know what he was doing. He was just a young guy like me who had kids, and he just did the best that he knew how. And he took the things that his dad taught him, and maybe he made him a little bit better, and maybe he couldn't. Maybe he made him a little bit worse. But he did the best that he could, and I realized that for all of these expectations that I had of my father, and the things that he did great were wonderful, and the things that he didn't do great, I need to forgive this young guy
who was allowed to take the baby home.
Yeah. was allowed to take the baby home, and then and then he did it plenty more times, taking plenty more kids home with all my siblings. He did the best he could, and then I realized I kind of forgive myself for not knowing what to do, but I'm gonna do the best that I can, and I'll try to find a few more manuals and whatever else, and try to read up and talk to other parents. But I think that's what I hope that's what our dads did. They did the best they could with what they had and what they knew and what their dads taught them, and with kind of their inner conflict that they had, and their outer conflict and other things that they had, and the things they ran around town doing, and helping and loving other people in the community. And I think that's how I forgive my dad for my expectations. I forgive myself for not knowing what I'm doing. And that's what I wanted to express.
Thank you. So I'm gonna move on. These are rich stories, and I'm grateful. Thank you. To give you hope about the people you work with. I also was trained in the Myers-Briggs to use it in my work, but the first time I ever took the Myers-Briggs, I did not endorse a single item that was extroverted. Now, okay, so if you believe that, I mean, it's true, and it's changed somewhat over the years. So there is proof that people don't change, but they do learn new patterns of behavior. Patience. None of us would be alive if our parents didn't practice some patience. So there's patience again. There's different kinds of patience. Patience to not respond with anger to the harm done to us. Patience with the dukkha of samsara. The junk. The nasty stuff. Now, the challenge is that all of samsara is dukkha, but there's some of it that's a lot more apparent than others. So it's having no expectations. Venerable Rabina, who I love to quote, is, when you're with others, keep your hands and your feet to yourself, and keep your mouth shut when you especially want to say something. And when you're alone, watch your mind. My father couldn't do that. He did not keep his hands and feet to himself. Well, not all of us had an opportunity for that, but I watched him beat one of my brothers to the point where my mother came between them with a broom. I also have photographs, I wouldn't have remembered this, of his holding a baby and trying to baste a turkey at the same time. I think patience is one of the extraordinary things of parents. Bearing with suffering to practice the Dharma. Parenting is practicing the Dharma. In the sense that, they talk a lot about, becoming a monk is the best path, or a nun is the best path, to give it all up. But, if people didn't become parents, there wouldn't be any monks or nuns. So, we have to have some gratitude here. And Rabina tells the story about there's so many minds that want to take human rebirth, that when a couple is trying to have a baby, they're just circling like planes in a landing pattern over JFK, seeing if they can be the one to get born this time. So, but the patience that you're up all night with a sick child. With my stepdaughter, I had the privilege of cleaning up projectile vomit. you know. Not screaming at them when they are screaming in the store because you made them put the candy back that they grabbed at the checkout counter. You know, the checkout counter, the gauntlet of temptation. You know, some sadist created it to challenge parents, you know. There's the patience of persisting, no matter what, hanging in there. The patience to potty train. You know, look at all of the times, you know, actually it's one of the ones that stands out kind of the most for me. And some of it, you know, some of it's easy to do. You know, you don't even think about being annoyed. But, you know, the number of parents the number of people that say to me, you know, I didn't learn to do that because my mom just wanted to get it done, and she didn't want to take the extra time to let me stir it, you know, or whatever. And the good news is some of those people go on to be fabulously cooks because they're going to show their parents, mother's father. But you know, not being so attached to the product, you know, that's patience, you know. Joyful effort, you know, even though you were scared, you know, there was joy in bringing the baby home, and you knew it was going to be hard. Or you didn't know how hard it was going to be till you were doing it, but, you know, you know, it doesn't mean that a lot of what you do for your children brings you a great deal of joy, both while you're doing it and after it. But a lot of what you do for children isn't easy when you're doing it. And you do it. And that's a Dharma practice. That's a Dharma practice. Concentration, you know, the ability to focus, meditation, you know, that's very important. You know, if you meditate, you can become a better parent and all of that stuff. I can't believe the kind of concentration it must take to put together the bicycle that comes at Christmas. That there's a lot of ways in which we bring concentration. Your kid comes home with the new math. You know, there are people that are homeschooling. That's probably, you know, they've mastered all of that. But concentration, you know, really listening, really when the child is crying, really trying to pay attention to see, especially before they can talk, what's bothering them. Why are they crying? Well, you know, wisdom is seeing emptiness directly, that things are not as they appear, nothing exists from its own side, on and on and on. I mean, I can use the words, do I have any understanding of it? No. But then there's the conventional impermanence. If you did not believe in impermanence, you would never try to teach your child to ride a bike, kick a soccer ball, or learn to swim. Because if everything is permanent, couldn't happen. There could be no change. So your practice of, you know, potty training, you know, all of those things are examples of you believing in impermanence on a daily basis. Things are not always as they appear. Your wisdom to know that they're yelling at it, not because they're angry with you, because you are the only safe place that they can yell. Now, that's sometimes not true. That might get some people hit, you know, but it is. You know, somebody said, for those of you, I guess the best wording is, you had a really rotten father. And I really appreciate Fran's comment about a positive memory coming. As I said, my father died in 87, so 13 and 18, that's 31 years. Is that what it is? Yeah, 31 years that he's been dead. A lot of these positive stories didn't start coming to mind until I knew he was leaving. I mean, you know. But for those of you that had that, is there anything that you internalized about what you really didn't want to do? As this gentleman said, did it stop here? Are you raising your children differently? I'd like to close, as usual, with a little bit of humor. I was going to have some slides, but my computer's in the shop. So you're all going to have to use your imaginations, because these were cartoons. So there's a dad sitting on a couch with a Father's Day card. And the kids said, and the kids say, Dad, the money in the card was our allowance. Can we have it back? Dad's in bed. Little girl by the side of the bed. How do you like your eggs? Black on both sides or black on one side? Dad, can we have some money to buy your Father's Day present? The ultimate in generosity. So, okay, so picture a father wearing very brightly striped pajamas, like purple and pink or something really, like something like the shirt I bought my father, and a tie and bunny slippers. And his wife is holding her coffee and she's looking at him. And he said, each of them wanted me to wear their present first. So let's see, we've got, so now I'm going to kind of tell a story. Well, and it's not one I made up. There's, it's from one of the nuns here reads the Lotus Sutra all the time, and she's never told me this story. I'm going to have to say, do you know about the story in the Lotus Sutra? This is really cool. I should read that sutra. So one day, there's a very, very wealthy man, and one day a fire broke out in the house. And the man, he saw it, and the man was outside. And he shouted into the house, tell the kids to come out. But clearly they were busy playing or busy doing whatever, in their rooms, on their iPads or whatever with their earphones on. They didn't hear them or whatever. Well, no, I guess there wouldn't have been. So then he thought, I've got to get the kids out. I've got to get the kids out. And I don't know why he didn't go in and grab them, but whatever. This is a sutra, so there's some little license with the story. And he starts yelling. He says, listen, come on out. I've got carts of everything you wanted. Carts and carts of, come on out. It's all for you. Why don't you come out and play with them? So, and he just described stuff they'd been asking for, just kind of real quickly. Yeah. So the kids, eager to play, ran out the door. And, of course, and what was there was a cart filled with precious stones pulled by white bullocks. So in this parable, the father is Buddha. And the sentient beings, the children, are sentient beings trapped in the burning house. The burning house represents, doesn't matter, whatever you want. And the teachings of the Buddha are like a father getting boys to leave their distractions and their pastimes for the greater pleasure of liberation. So we have a few minutes. Would anybody, I did a speed version of the last 3 perfections, but let's see, it's 11:45. We have about 5 minutes, right? So, hey, that's pretty good timing for me. Sorry, just real, you know. Would anybody like to share?
I'm going to try to do this. Many years ago, a friend of mine told me that someday I would be middle-aged. And she said it'll have nothing to do with how old you are. It'll have everything to do with being in the middle of being a parent to your children and a parent to your parents. I've learned so much about myself and about being a parent by having to reflect on learning to parent my own parents. They need me in a very different way now than they ever did before, and I need them in a different way. And it's teaching me a very different kind of patience with my own kids, in learning how to be patient with the people who taught me patience in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, well, if there aren't any more, oh, I'm sorry, Julie? Sorry I don't know all your names. Apologize. It won't ever happen, but...
I just have I have a lot of happy memories about my father. Unfortunately, my sister and the other siblings don't see it the same way. And I'm like, well, you just have to either grab onto the bad stuff or you can hang on to the good stuff. You know, pick and choose your clothing and your mind. I remember my mom and dad always told me that when my dad brought me home from the hospital, that it was in the middle of winter, December 16th, and that he fell and slipped on the ice, but I did not touch the ground. And so, you know, I think that's really, fathers do take care of their children the best they can, even though there is the impermanence. Things do change. Sometimes fathers leave, sometimes they come back. Mine never left, but I've had friends that didn't have the father I did, and I'm very grateful to my father and all the other people that did some mentoring for some of my friends. You know, they would come over to see my dad. I remember my father's funeral. There were so many people at St. Raphael's Catholic Church in there that you couldn't get in the building. It was standing room only. So he must have did something good. Very, very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Donna, we do announcements afterwards, so let's close with Shanti Devas. What? Well, we got it's only 2 minutes, so we'll, and
okay, we'll go to page 240, I think 246. And we'll say Master Shanti Deva's dedication prayer. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Sanskrit there. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain a notion of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments.
And may
diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Donna, can I double dip?
Sure.
I would like to apologize, which is, I'm a nun, but I had another profession for 30 years before this, and I think sometimes my answers slip into kind of social and psychological reasons rather than speaking directly from the Dharma. So one of the things that, and I know this is Dharma for a Happy Life, and so it's not necessarily, a deep kind of Dharma teaching, but what I'd like to say is that when we, people have talked about taking negative experiences and, transforming them into the path. The other thing is, and it's a very complex phenomena, and Geshe always refers to karma as a very hidden phenomena, but any of us that have had both positive and negative experiences with other beings, including our parents, we have a karmic relationship with them that didn't just manifest in this life. You don't end up with the parents you end up with by accident. And so when there's good, it's the ripening of positive karmic seeds. And when there's bad, it is also the ripening of negative karmic seeds. So finally, as hard as it is, it's our responsibility to, deal with those seeds. And it's not easy. And for some people, it is just suffering, and they go on to the next life with just the fact that the suffering burned off that seed. And for some people, it transforms into something positive. I rejoice for all the fathers here and all parents and their great kindness that makes it possible for all of us to be here, because I certainly wasn't delivered by the stork. And thank you all for being here. Donna, you have announcements.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make you all aware of a lot of exciting things that are coming up in the next few weeks. Next week, Geshe Sangpo will be teaching again, and then the following week is the 1st of July, and we are going to we're going to have our celebration of His Holiness's birthday on that day. So we'll have cake and prayers and some of his teachings here. So that'll be great. Don't miss it. The weekend, then the Friday after that is His Holiness's actual birthday, Friday, July 6th, and we are once again going to have a blood drive as our gift to His Holiness and our expression of compassion. He always says what he wants most from, if anybody wants to make an offering to him, it's an offering of compassionate actions. So last year we had, we collected 39 pints of blood, and we've already got yeah. Wow. Yes, we wowed the Red Cross. And we're going to be doing that right here in the Kadampa again, so we'll have all the Buddhas around us to inspire us. You can find information about the blood drive on our website, and there's a link there to where you go to register. And also, if you are unable to donate blood for any reason, but you want to be part of this, we do need volunteers, and volunteering in support of the blood drive is just as important as giving the blood. So we thank you if you're interested in doing that. And again, if you go to the page, there's a link to the volunteer site. And we're going to have, I don't know why I didn't think of this last year, we're going to have a card that everybody who's part of this can sign, and we're going to send that to His Holiness from all of us. And so he'll have all of our names, and he'll hear about our gift directly. And then also that weekend, we're going to have a visiting teacher here, Don Handrick. He was here last year. He's actually a resident teacher at, now I don't remember the name of it, but at the FPMT Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he travels for half of the year visiting other centers. He was here last year. He's going to do a weekend workshop on the prayer that we say every Sunday, the Four Immeasurables. That's an expression of infinite love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So he'll be teaching us about that in depth over that weekend and including on the Sunday morning. But I hope you'll come to the whole workshop. And he's also going to teach the Monday night Discovering Buddhism class that weekend. What else? Then later in July, we have a very special opportunity. We're going to do a noonday retreat, and this is like a 2.5-day intensive purification retreat. There's a lot of prostrations. Don't be afraid of prostrations. I did the noonday about 7 years ago when Venerable Rubina was here, and to my amazement, I got through the whole thing, and I was ready to go again on Sunday morning. So it's very intensive, and that'll be starting on the Thursday evening, July 19th, and on the morning of Sunday, July 20th. So you can learn about that also if you go to our website, and that is, we do need prior registration for that. And then you'll see we have a table set up here. After the teachings at 1 o'clock today, there's going to be a Medicine Buddha Puja for the benefit of Russell Allen. He's the father-in-law of our member Christine Allen, and he passed away a couple of weeks ago. So this will be for his benefit. And Medicine Buddha is really this lovely puja. I mean, puja is this kind of scary word, but it's just a prayer service. And I really love Medicine Buddha. There were 7 bodhisattvas who became the Medicine Buddhas, and they made this promise to be of benefit to all beings. And so you go through the list of all of them, and you kind of remember their qualities and the ways they can bless you. And it's really, I personally find it really beautiful. And we say all of it except the mantra in English, so it's very easy to follow along. So if you are curious, if you've never been to a puja, if you could use the benefit of a service that is for the benefit of physical and mental healing, then I recommend that you come. And then last but not least, really, let's all thank Kandala because... Okay. Stop. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day.